And Crystal, what a great presentation. You're a ball of energy. I think you and I could be friends. But anyway, that's fantastic. That's exciting. For just a little bit, it would make me want to go back to the classroom to incorporate that just a little bit, But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to get started. Let's see. And, this is always fun to share the screen. So everybody let me know if you can see it. Kim, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen there? Fantastic. Thank you. Let's see. Here we go. So thank you, first of all, for the invitation. I'm coming to you live from my home here in Kentucky. I am one of the people from the trenches, right? For 27 years, I taught in Kentucky. And then when I retired, they came calling and they said, would you like to use some of the things you did in the classroom with FBLA and your certification program to work for us? And I said, sure. So now instead of teaching kids in my retirement, my second career, I'm now teaching adults. And let me let you know, there's not a lot of difference. But I would like to give you some advice today on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that's entrepreneurship. And so a lot of the things I'm going to talk about, I hope that if you're listening, and I know this is being recorded, so it'll get out to a bigger audience, but I hope there's going to be some things that I'm going to talk about that may spur some things in your mind to say, I could implement that, or how can I help my school implement that, or how can I get this program going, or like in Crystal, the previous speaker, how can I get this going directly to the kids to get it into their hands? But without further ado, let's get started. Some entrepreneurial education advice from a teacher who is quite passionate about it. Some details. First of all, my daddy was one of the smartest people in the world. And he always said to me, Jennifer, strike while the iron is hot. And as a little girl, I didn't really understand it too much until I got older. And then he would explain it to me again. And then, on those field trips, when we would go to these places where I'd watch my granddad weld. And we also had a farm and we would shoe our own horses. And when I would watch them take that very hot horseshoe and put it on the anvil, and they would hammer it, and it would just mold and bend to the shape that my granddaddy wanted it. It really came to life in my mind that there are times in our life to strike. And if you don't strike while the iron is hot, that horseshoe is not going to mold. It's going to break. In fact, you can actually break it. You strike while the iron is hot, and things can really happen. I just would like to make that analogy that right now in our country, the iron is hot. There's never been a more exciting time to talk about entrepreneurship. Take a look at this graph I've got. You can take a look and just see, applications for new business in our country from 2005 going on. And then all of a sudden COVID hits, right? And when COVID comes along, look what happened to the number of applications for small businesses to start in our country. Now it's leveled off some since then, but still look where it's at now compared to where it was pre-COVID. If you don't think it's a hot time to talk about entrepreneurship, take a look at this. After the pandemic, this number blows my mind. Almost 50% of all employees, we work for small businesses, not the big companies, small businesses, like 50 employees or smaller, maybe 10 employees. And then look at this. I had to really look and make sure it wasn't a typo. Take a look at this graph. 99.9% of all businesses in the United States are small businesses. That's really big. That's really huge. And think about what makes a small business, from restaurants to cafes to barbershops to all those things that incorporate a small business. When you look at those sheer numbers, and you look at what's happened in the last few years since COVID, folks, it is time to strike. The iron is hot. That great resignation that we all heard about, some of us were part of it. It was real. And what did so many of those people do when they left their jobs or started a new job or thought about a new path? They started their own business. And here's my question for you. Are your students doing it? You bet they are. If you're listening, kind of nod your head to yourself and go, yes, I learned a lot from my students. I taught so long that I remember when the internet first came out, and this thing called YouTube came out, and I would watch my students. And there was this one of my students. She worked at a retail store. She actually quit that job because she was making so much money making makeup videos from her bedroom and her bathroom. It blew my mind. But you know what? That propelled her into a career now. She's one of the biggest digital marketers for a large Fortune 500 company. And she did it on her own. And you think about, are our students doing this? Yes, they are. Which begs the question, if our students are wanting to start their own businesses, who's going to teach them formal, basic principle, those foundation principles of entrepreneurship? Do we want to save them a little heartache if we can? I did, and I still do. My question for you is this. There's never been a more time for this hungry student atmosphere that we've got for entrepreneurship education. And I firmly believe this, and you can disagree with me if you want, but I'm right. Our economy in our country is going to thank us. Our local communities, I'm from small town, our local community is going to thank us. But bigger than that, just to be frank, our parents are going to thank us, because sometimes kids learn things on their own and they don't maybe learn those foundational principles. But the good news is, if our students are landing in classes taught by you, taught by programs where entrepreneurship mindset is there, those students are going to have a 99.999% better chance of being successful because of the education they will have gotten from us. So let's prepare them. And yes, there's a test for that. Here at Certiport, we're the nation's leader in industry certifications that are recognized by major companies. And to me, one of the most important things, which I'll talk about more later, is that the big think tanks, the big companies have put their stamp on our test and said, yeah, that's the valid test. We have a certification called the Entrepreneurship and Small Business Certification, and it gives students proof of their skill set, and it also gives them confidence. I think every teacher could tell a whole, storybook full of those students that we saw that didn't have the confidence to do much until we showed them they can do it. And then their confidence level went off the charts. This entrepreneurship test, or what we lovingly call the ESB certification, helps our students bridge the skill gap, have proof for their resumes, show employers that they went the extra mile. So let's get into the meat of it. Every test has objectives, right? So I want you to know that one of my best pieces of advice, if you're listening to this, you're thinking, oh, I'd like to incorporate this certification into my program, is that we don't make it rocket science, folks. We have a list of objectives. Here's what needs to be taught. Here's what you need to have in your lesson plans. And we don't hide that. There's no secret to that. We give that to you. And what I did, and kind of mistakenly, is I started printing those out and giving them to my students. And I actually had people tell me, oh, you're killing the trees. Well, I love trees. I really do. But I also know that in our digital world, these days, if you actually give kids something tangible, they can touch it, they pay attention to it. And her name was Carly. And she sat cat-a-corner for me when I was up teaching, in my teaching area. And I noticed one day she was check marking, and she was looking at me and check marking. And I thought, what is she doing? Is she checking up on me? What is she doing? So I said, Carly, honey, what are you doing? She said, oh, I'm just checking off all the things that we've learned how to do. Do you know, Miss Stubblefield, there's only 3 things on here that I can't check mark? Are we nearing the test? And I learned that day that I was teaching her project management. I was teaching her note-taking skills. Folks, those objectives mean things. And so we give those to you. Another thing is, it's a 50-minute test. It's a drag and drop situation, true, false, situational, what's the steps, what's the best course of action here, a lot of situational things that entrepreneurial students should know. If you're going to run a small business, you should know what a W-2 is, right? And so we have all these things on there that different ways to test that. We also have a calculator. We have this skip section. So if you come across a question and you go, yeah, we did that about 4 weeks ago and I can't remember, they can skip it and come back to them. I always tell my students, use the test to take the test. And this entrepreneurship test is one of those things. Question 27 may spur your mind to go, oh, cost of goods sold. Oh, yeah, I get it now. It's one of the traditional ways to me of taking a test. Another thing that I love, and I referred to it earlier, is that take a look at the big people that have put their stamp of approval on our exam. And it's worth college credit as well. To me, that's valid. Now, here's a little secret. I teach a senior citizen exercise class 2 days a week at 7 a.m. Okay. I could get on the internet probably by the end of this presentation and do click, and get certified to be an aerobics instructor for senior citizens. You agree? You can go find it, right? I can do it in 3 minutes. And they don't a bit more know if I can do it or not. That's not what we're about at Certiport. We're about valid tests. We're about asking the big people, the big think tanks, who are the experts in this area to help make this test. This test is there, it's valid. And when your students pass this certification test, they can look an employer in the eye and say, yeah, I know that. I've got that. I understand that. And it's foundational to me. It leads to success. Moving on. If anything, the Southern girl is real. And so I just want to give you a few real things. And at any time, the folks that are on the call live, please stop and put it in the chat if you have a question that you'd like for me to talk about. A question we can, but I'll just keep rolling and until I hear somebody pop in. But number one, I am not into train wrecks. I think every first year teacher can look back on the first year they taught and go, yeah, that was a disaster. I caused many train wrecks in my classrooms. Here's the main thing is that I would ask my students to go do activity 17 on page 99 or whatever. And I had never done it myself. That's a train wreck. That's a train wreck waiting to happen. The biggest piece of advice I can give you is that you need to sit for our certification test yourself before you ask your students to do it. Now, in doing that, a couple things happen. Number one, you're going to realize the validity of it and the seriousness of it. And oh my goodness, my students can do this. I'm already teaching half this stuff because I've been teaching this, this whole entrepreneur mindset for years. But secondly, you know what else it's going to do? It's going to give you empathy. I didn't have test anxiety, but it's real. You agree, teachers? It's real. And taking the test before you ask your students to do it, it gives you empathy. So on the day of the test, when your students take it, you understand why their heart may be beating a little quickly, right? Certiport allows every teacher to take the test for free. Yes, you heard me right. We have sales reps that can get that voucher to you. You can sit for it. We'll proctor you. You can have someone in your school proctor you if you're already a testing center. We want you to try the test. And after you take it, we hope that you see this is something that I should be adding to my program. So my number one piece of advice is this: never ask your students to do something that you haven't done yourself. And let us help you with that. Number two, I know absolutely nothing about many things. I am not a subject matter expert on all things entrepreneurship and small business. For example, my husband files all the taxes. I haven't touched taxes since I did an easy 40 form, maybe when I was like 18. But in my classroom, when I taught entrepreneurship and small business, you can bet that absolutely I taught tax a little bit. And then I brought in an expert. I would get other people to come in and talk about that for my small business students, because I can tell you this. I can tell my students every day that the sky's blue But when another person comes in and tells them the same thing I've been trying to teach them, and they say the sky's blue, they're going to believe it. You understand what I'm talking about, teachers, right? Get your experts to come in, guest speakers for the win. It's perfect for entrepreneurship education. I am all about field trips. I'm all about those projects when you see things in action. And some of the best ways to teach entrepreneurship and small business is take your students to an entrepreneurship small business location. I'll give you an example. I took my students to a place in Nashville, part of our FBLA group, Future Business Leaders of America. Some of you may know about FBLA. And so I had been teaching in my unit on business management about this concept called hoteling. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's where, you know, they're trying to condense office space, and you may not need an office 5 days a week, but you're going to come in and you want to meet with clients or whatever, and you only need it a couple hours a week. And some days you may need the conference room, but some days you just need this small little office to have a video meeting, whatever. And you get on this app in your company's intranet, or, you know, you whatever, and you schedule it. So it's called hoteling. It's like scheduling a hotel room. So I'm on a field trip in Nashville, and I noticed about 5 of my kids are not coming along with the group as we're touring this business. And I give them the teacher eye, as if you don't get over here right now, you know. And they said, come on. So I go over there and I'm giving them, what are you doing? Let's go. And they said, look, Miss Stubblefield, look. And on the door to this cute little room with glass walls that had a computer and had, I think, a copy machine maybe, or I can't remember exactly, but it did have a dedicated phone line. It had a lamp. It looked nice. It was decorated nice. And on the outside of the door, it said, hoteling office number 2. And my students said, that's what you were talking to us about. They saw it, they believed it, and that chapter that I tried to teach, you know, hypothetically, then came to life. When you're teaching small business entrepreneurship concepts, get your students in the field. That is one of the best pieces of advice I can give you. Number 4, I know a little about some acronyms in my field, but if you put me in another field and there's a bunch of acronyms, I'm lost. The world of entrepreneurship has a lot of acronyms. Do you agree? CFO, COO, you know, LIFO, FIFO. And then there's terms that can be abbreviated like cost of goods sold or the Dow Jones Industrial Average, all those things that our small business students should be able to know. Well, I did not have the pleasure of having an entrepreneurship class. We had 8 classes in my program, and I quickly realized my students could pass this ESB test, but there were a few parts of the objectives I was missing. So I embedded them into my classroom. It could be in my Microsoft certification classroom. It could be in my accounting class. It could be in my business law class, whatever it was. I started embedding a lot of these acronyms that I knew were going to be on the test in my classes, just as an embedding. And I did it. And I have to confess, I was in Idaho last month, and I gave my ball away because someone begged me for it. So I have a balloon. But a soccer ball works best because, you know, it's got the little hexagon, little square things, you know. You take a Sharpie and you cover that soccer ball, or in my case, a balloon, with acronyms. And when the kids see the ball come out or the balloon come out, the big beach balls, they're perfect. And you hit it across the class, and whoever catches it, so if you catch it and you say, right pinky finger. So whatever acronym is closest to my right pinky finger, and in this one, it happens to be, retail versus wholesale. And the student then has to tell the difference between resale versus wholesale in the world of small business. I would cover it with acronyms, and the students would then toss it to someone else. It was fun. It was exciting. And the students got into it. And we all know the stats on learning through play has like 3 million times more, you know, longevity in someone's brain. They're going to remember the acronym. It spurs them on. Make learning fun, as it should be, especially with some of this entrepreneurship things regarding acronyms. My next one regarding embedding is, for example, when I was teaching Excel sorting, I would give them a list of terms that they had to type in and not in alphabetical order, but then they had to sort them by alphabetical order. And guess what the terms were? Small business and accounting terms, things regarding supply and demand, because I was teaching entrepreneurship and small business while teaching Excel certification or my Microsoft Excel class. Also, another thing I did, and this is just my good old, Halloween purple bucket, but I would have a fish bowl, use whatever you've got, a big trash can, whatever it is. But in that, when the kids, I'd say, go get the fish bowl. And they knew they would go get this. This is the actual one I had in my classroom. It's not a fish bowl, but you get the idea. And in it would be, 50 what I called problem of the day, a math problem regarding small business. Or it would be some prompts like this. And it would say, okay, give me 2 pros and cons of having a partnership instead of a sole proprietorship. And the student then had to do it. Now, let's say that student didn't know the answer. I allowed them to phone a friend. They could go, can I phone a friend? Yes, you may phone one friend. Hey, and then, they would look at Johnny, who's over there going, after me, I know. I use these concepts to embed the concept, the objectives for the test into my classroom. I also use the exit slips. Who doesn't love a good exit slip, right? I would use squirrel moments. In the middle of my lecture on sexual harassment, I would squirrel, and then I would talk about what happens when the supply of items is low, but the demand is high. And of course, in unison, they would all say, the price goes up. And then I would use that as my exit slip. Something like, what happens to the price, whatever. That's how I did it, if that helps you. Number 6. I am not strong in math. I already told you my husband does all our taxes. But folks, I'll say this gently. The kind of math that you and I use as adults, the kind of math that small business owners must know to operate their business, the kind of math that is operational and foundational for business owners is the kind of math that's on the ESB test. What a concept, right? For example, and I'm just giving you an example, and you can laugh or not, but let's see if I can here we go. Here is a math problem that I would have up as a bell ringer as I walked in one day. And this could be in any class. It didn't have to be, an entrepreneurship class. This could be my computer science class, whatever. My students could not do this math problem. They couldn't. Half the time they would come up with the final cost at checkout being $85. And I would look at them and I'd say, they're on sale. They did not understand applying discount. So we would do these kind of bell ringers in my class, and I would show them how to do it. And then we would have prizes or whatever. Folks, this is the kind of math that is on the ESB test. And let me get back to our PowerPoint here. Things like booth rent versus, owning something, adding in the tax and subtracting the discount, all those things. I use math problem of the days in my fishbowl to teach the math that was on the ESB test. That's how I embedded it. Another thing is at Certiport, we have all kinds of practice tests. Who doesn't love a good practice, right? I always tell everybody when I go to Kroger and they have moved my cream of mushroom soup from aisle 6, bottom left, it messes with me. My whole grocery shopping experience is over. The practice tests that many of our suppliers and our education partners have, they very closely mimic our certification test in terms of layout. The skip buttons in the same place, the cream mushroom soup, the timers in the same place, so that when your students sit down, they feel like they're in a familiar environment. And here's what I did. Taking the certification test was not something you were guaranteed. It was a privilege that you had to earn. And I used the practice test as a gatekeeper. If you couldn't pass the practice test, you didn't get the privilege of setting for the real certification test. Because number one, it's valuable. It's expensive. It's something that absolutely is important enough that I held it up to a high regard. If you don't hold it up in a high regard, they're not going to. So practice test is something we have. We can talk about that if you have questions regarding that. And if I've lost you, if you've gone off on a squirrel moment, let me bring you back in with this important information. I work for a software company. I think our software is pretty good. I've authored for them a little bit. I think it's pretty good. But there is nothing more important than the teacher in that classroom. They are the number one resource. They are the ones who know what students are going through a divorce at home. They know whose mama is sick. They know who their boyfriend just broke up with them and they don't have a date for prom and its life is coming to an end. You know your students and they know you and they want to hear from you. You may not think that some days, but really, you are the number one resource. Your excitement for an entrepreneurial mindset is contagious. And if you've got it and in your teaching you show it, the proof will be in the pudding. Your entrepreneurial ideas and your entrepreneurial programs will take off. I saw it happen. I couldn't really believe how it happened, but it's real. And so if no one's told you that lately, let me be the one to remind you that you are the number one resource in that classroom. All right, moving on. FBLA, as I mentioned earlier, is a huge passion of mine. In Kentucky, we always said, we got horses, we got hay. Kentucky rules FBLA. And we would chant it on the airplanes and in the national programs. You know that. But if I can give you a suggestion as you think about implementing an entrepreneurship program in your school, once I figured out to use my CTSO, which was FBLA, and put it with my entrepreneurship program, all my competitive events for FBLA, oddly enough, my kids who were scoring the highest on my FBLA entrepreneurship event, oddly enough, were also the ones who were scoring the highest on the entrepreneurship test. What an idea, right? Well, I didn't think about that earlier, but once I started putting them together and in putting that as a part of my classroom, things really took off. I don't know what club you may have. It may be FFA. It could be junior achievement. It could be something dealing with an entrepreneurship nonprofit, such as Crystal talked to us about earlier. Whatever it is, whatever your CTSO is, use it as a bridge to teach entrepreneurship. I want to introduce you to three of my students, Ellie, Kayla, and Emily. They were the best, and I'm talking about they were the best of the best. They had 4.0s. I did not have a 4.0. They were super smart, the best of the best, took all my business classes. Every event I entered them in, every certification I entered them in, they won. Like they won it. They were the high scorers. So in my mind, they were going to be the next CEO of Procter & Gamble. They were going to take over. They were going to run Ernst & Young. They were going to move to Nashville and take over the Tennessee Titans, and they were going to be the next general manager of business and accounting for this big sports. I just had all these ideas for them based on their interest. And imagine my surprise one day when Kayla came to me and she said, Miss Stubblefield, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Oh, yes. Dear Harvard, I was ready. Bring it on. And she said, it's going to go to the Ezel Cosmetology School. And I went, and I know my face betrayed me. I said, I'm sorry, to who? Shame on me. Because Ellie and Emily did the same thing just a year or two later. Shame on me for me thinking that wasn't what they were going to do, or that wasn't the path that I thought they should do, because that was running their own small business in cosmetology. What? Shame on me. Heaven forbid that since they were freshmen, all I had done is pump into them entrepreneurial ideas, entrepreneurial projects, doing these huge group projects where they were the project managers, running their own business, taking them all over the country to all of these conferences where all they could think about was starting their own business and looking at this idea of entrepreneurship. And then when they wanted to do it, I didn't think that was where I wanted them to be. Shame on me. The biggest piece of advice I can give you is when you teach your students this, you better get out of their way. Get out of their way because you've lit the fire. But don't take it from me. Let's take it from them. These are in their words. Studying business principles and getting certified in ESB prepared me for the career skills that I never knew I would need as a cosmetologist. Time management concepts to help me schedule clients effectively. Money management concepts that enable me to keep track of expenses and revenue and figure profit. And most especially the marketing skills that I use every day to promote and build my business have been invaluable to me. While I would like to think I'm skilled in hair and makeup, I'm so very happy to say that my business skill game is pretty strong as well. I can't do one without the other. And that was from Ellie. And then this is from Emily. She said, choosing a career was scary. Finally, I took the advice of many who told me to find two things that I was really good at and combine them. I loved my business classes in high school, and I was so proud of the certifications that I'd earned. And I also loved hair and the feeling of helping others feel their best. My business training and concepts like budgeting, customer service, building relationships, public speaking, organization, telephone skills, and most importantly, being confident and assertive in my ability to make quick decisions, all of these have served me well. My business is booming, and when I look back, I can connect the dots. I couldn't have just one skill set. I now see that I had to have them both. You better have short hair if you want to get into any of these girls because they're making waves in the world of cosmetology, weddings. They're big monies in weddings, updos, all these things, folks. And I look back and I listen to their words and I think that they saw it and they're living their best lives, making their own schedule, running their own businesses. And I couldn't be prouder. Back to our original thought. Strike while the iron is hot. My question for you as you're listening is the iron hot in your school, in your program, wherever you are? It is. It may not be sometimes as visible as others, but sometimes you have to look for it. But folks, striking while the iron is hot is so important. I guess my question for you is, how can I help you? Here at Certiport, my job is the customer success manager, AKA I help teachers teach. How can I help you? I can do PD trainings at your school. I can be a guest speaker. I can help you get started with your school by connecting you with the person from your state to get a certification program started at your school. Would you like to take the test yourself? Let's talk, let's email. I'll get you started. I'll point you in the right direction. My question for you is this. How can I help you best? And I'd love to set up a meeting and talk to you. And I'm going to stop my well, actually get my email address there and I can put it in the chat, but there's my email address for contact. For you folks who may be listening, it's jennifer.stubblefield@pearson.com. And I'm going to stop sharing just so that now we can have a conversation. We've got some time left for questions and conversations. But at this time, is there a question that I can answer you or we can discuss?
Well, I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you, Jennifer. And I'm glad I had my mute on because I was like snort laughing through the whole thing.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, Tori, but
very good thing. But I mean, you just drove home your message, but you're so funny. That was wonderful. I would love to just share a little thing about Certiport and what to me was always the elephant in the room when it came to the ESB. Now, I was a subject matter expert for the ESB version 2. I love the test, but all of this entrepreneurially minded people always go like for a long time, even us at everyone, well, they have a test. If that doesn't make sense, we don't like tests. We know on tests, boo.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It wasn't until meeting Nick and Nick runs Certiport and learning more about the test, first of all, but then saying, okay, the test is so interesting. It's very good test. And then the resources to help teachers with the test, all good stuff, shameless self-promotion. It was this concept of, yes, but schools are set up in a way that they understand testing, and industry set up in a way that they understand this path to certification and what that means. And like you said, your certification is vetted, it's industry approves it, all those great things. But it was just getting past that thing in my head, like, oh, a test. So I wonder if you could kind of speak to that, because I know maybe some other folks on here were thinking about that, because we thought about it forever.
Right. Well, the thing is, schools test. Schools test. You don't want to get this little 5-foot Southern girl started on tests should not be the only measurement. I'll talk about my son because I can. He, his ACT score wasn't, earth shattering. But I knew from the time that he was in 7th grade that he was going to work with his hands and probably make more money than I ever would. And, straight out of school, he went into construction, and his goal is to be a general contractor by the time he's 30. He hated tests, Tori, okay? But even he saw, okay, I want to do this. I need to know how to run a business. So he took the entrepreneurship and small business test and passed it. And let me tell you, that propelled him to, I can do this. I can do this. College, post-secondary isn't for everyone. And I think tests such as this shows I can do this. If I want to be an architect and go to college for however many years it takes to become an architect, but let me see if I can run my own architect business. The neatest story, and I'll watch my time because I want to open up further questions, but one of the neatest stories at Certiport that we've done in research is, and I'm going to quickly do it, and I may get a little bit of it wrong because I don't remember exactly, but it goes something like this. In Louisiana, oil wells, right? The big oil rigs, right? They needed a ton of underwater welders. They couldn't get them fast enough. So the state of Louisiana put together this program. We're gonna get all these kids, and we're gonna train them in welding. Fantastic. And they would go into welding, and then some of them thought, I'll start my own welding business, make my money. And the turnover rate and the success of their business was not good at all. Because guess what the missing piece was? They were teaching them the physical skill of welding, but they were not teaching them how to invoice clients, how to keep up with, budgeting, marketing, all those things. They didn't understand what net 30 means, things like that. And once the state of Louisiana took our entrepreneurship idea and they started incorporating that into their welding program, well, the rest is history. It's really turned the program around. These tests aren't fun. Nobody likes to sit and, well, I guess some people like to sit and take a test. My husband probably would. I don't. But let me tell you, once you get bit by the bug of these certification tests, my students really, it gained them not only confidence, but it kind of got them bit by the competition bug. Kids would say, okay, well, why did Johnny get to take that test on entrepreneurship? When am I going to get to take that? Because they knew that Johnny had just won 6 scholarships because his resume had things on it that nobody else within our county had. Scarcity sells. I'm going to say it again. If we don't know that, shame on us. Scarcity sells. We do know this. Putting things in your students' resumes and in front of them that other people don't have makes them more marketable, makes them more valuable. It's common sense, right? So another thing is this about the test, to answer your question, Tori, is in order to give our test, you become a testing center, okay? And I can help you with that if you have questions. But once you become a testing center, to be honest with you, the hard part's done. Then you can add on this test, kind of like, remember that show back in the 90s? What is it? Trick my truck or pimp my ride or whatever it was, add on all these things, right? Quit laughing, Kim. You know exactly what I'm talking about because you watched it. But anyway, once you become a testing center, you can add this test, that test, this, because the hard part's done. And that's another thing I love about our testing program is, we have a test called the communication skills for business. Oh my goodness, the importance of communication skills, right? And post-COVID, I think every teacher in America could say that communication skills went backwards, right? And so once you add on the entrepreneurship test your program, then it's really easy to add on another one, or the Microsoft certification or the Adobe certification. So did that answer you a little bit, Tori, about testing in general?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's such a unique model to work with the school and in that way, but still be able to bring in these concepts, because that's hard, if you're sidestepping what the school wants you to do. So this way it's like that approach.
All right. And while you've made me think about one thing too. I applaud anyone who's listening whose school district has money. Good for you. I came from a school district that sometimes I had to beg, go before the board and just literally get on my knees and say, please. Money was not plentiful for my program. So thank goodness for Carl Perkins funding. If you're a federally funded program, Perkins funding is out there, and Perkins funding will pay for the certification. You can buy 2 vouchers, or you can buy a site license. We have all kinds of price points out there. And just honest again, back to my certification as an old woman aerobics teacher, right? If your certification, the validity of it sometimes does mean, that it's held in high regard. And I tell people all the time, they're not free. We let the teachers test free, but the reason they're not is because anything worth having is worth having at a cost. And I think it's very affordable, but at the same time, know that you have funding options out there, such as Perkins funding.
Good advice. Thank you so much. Any other questions? I think we could all agree that we could just listen to you talk all day.
Oh, goodness gracious. My children wouldn't agree. Hey, listen to this. Can I tell you real quick? And Kim Yoho is on here. She's new at Certiport. She's a veteran teacher from Florida, and I'm so glad she's on here. And she can speak more to the beauty of Florida, because they have CAPE funding, which is something that helps. So if you're listening from Florida, CAPE funding is a perfect fit for this. But also, I literally taught high school. That was my age group, 9 through 12. I taught some freshmen. They weren't my favorite. My favorite were juniors and seniors. My sister teaches middle school on purpose, like she chooses to do that. And the thought of going into a middle school classroom gives me hives. Okay, but I want to tell you this. Are you listening? I have a friend. Her name is Kim. And she's in Florida. Not Kim Yoho, another friend named Kim. Kim Kaiser is her name, I'll tell you. And she does this entrepreneurship small business with middle school teachers. Middle school students, middle school, okay? And we're talking 7th graders. And she has unbelievable passing rates and does incredible things, all with middle schoolers. So if you're listening, you think, oh, I teach freshmen, or I only teach seniors. Of course, juniors and seniors, this is made for them. But folks, we have people in our country doing things with entrepreneurship with middle schoolers, getting them bit by the bug early. And to me, it's very exciting. And if you have any questions about that, I'll be glad to also talk to you about that.
I taught middle school.
And there's medication for people like you, but
not for very long. I originally a couple years, and then I went up.
They're sweet.
They are. One of the things on the mug they gave me was hormones with feet. This one.
Perfect description. Perfect description. All right. Well, we've got 10 minutes left. Are there any other questions or things I could address about the entrepreneurship and small certification test at Certiport? Crickets out there. All right. Well, I will end it at this, Tori. Again, my email is jennifer.stubblefield@pearson.com. My job is to help teachers teach. I will help you get connected with the right person if you would like to try the entrepreneurship and small business test. And I'll just end this with saying thank you. If you're listening and you're teaching students entrepreneurial ideas, if you're putting that mindset in them, if you're doing things to show students a pathway for entrepreneurship, thank you. Our country thanks you. And the parents for sure are thanking you behind the scenes. And that's what I've got for today. Thank you, Tori, for this invitation. I really appreciate it. And happy Entrepreneurship Week.
Yes. Yes, this is wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you everyone who's on. Well, this is actually probably a good time. Let's all just take a 10-minute break, and we'll meet back right at 2 o'clock for our final presentation. I'm very excited to hear from Cameron. And yeah, so we'll go for 10 minutes.